best message in the world is ineffective if it's delivered to the wrong market. You could have the cure for cancer, but if you're just trying to ram it down someone's throat who's a triathlete, who's not sick, and in really good shape, I got news for you. He's not buying your cancer deal. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we try to do. We try to force a message on the wrong market. Now, a halfway decent message delivered to the right market can be a home run. So you don't even have to get really good at this, but if you find the right audience, you can be just half good and you'll connect with them. Now, if you try to have a message that, this is cute how these are all labeled. I'm wondering why I got the Pellegrino, because I wanted the Fiji. I'll figure that one out later. It's cute how they labeled these two. J for Jordan, J for Jeff, A for Andrew. But technically there's two J's, so I don't know which one is Jeff's and which one is Jordan's. But now they're all mine. Now, think about this for a minute. When you get your message and you have your unique selling proposition and you feel like you're communicating properly to the marketplace, and you find a message, so Katie, they use you as an example a lot. Katie's going to be up here for a case study, I think, at some point. Katie, I'm praying they told you this and I'm not the first to reveal this, because you'd be like really nervous right now. But Katie's going to be up here for a case study because Katie has found a market. Now, Katie, would you agree that when you find a market, and it's not easy to find, right? It's a lot of digging, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of grunt work, but when you find it, it's like, man, I got half the battle out of the way because now I have an audience. And now, would you agree that when it comes time to crafting your message, it's a lot easier and more relevant when you have a market to communicate to than the whole world? It's like lightning hits. Now, if you try to be everything to all people, we talked about this a second ago, it's really hard to connect. So there's a disconnect when you try to have a message that's for everybody. But when you decide that your audience is, middle-aged moms with kids and that's the route you're going, she can speak a whole different language to that audience than she could if she was just speaking to every woman in general. So now my question for you is, how many of you feel like in your business at this point, you have a target audience that you've selected, that you have an affinity with, that you know a lot about them? Perhaps you're in the target audience. By the way, that's a big tip. If you have ever been in the target audience that you're after, you have the ultimate opportunity to be able to connect with them. So if your audience is who you are, or maybe who you were and you've come out of that, that's a hint, by the way, of an audience that you should be seeking. So how many of you feel you have a market and an audience for what it is that you do? Hands high. I like to see some of you are half up. That's like a half pregnant hand up, they call it, right? But half the room, guys and gals, half the room, you feel like you have a market. That's big if you do. Now, that might not be the market you end with. You might have to do some testing, and you might have to do some tweaking, and you might have to run some ads, and you might have to get your hands dirty to figure out, does this message connect with this audience? But this is the game you have to play before you spend any money on advertising. You can't just go do it without any of this intelligence and thought process and the strategy that I'm talking about here today. So there's what's called riches and niches. Have you heard this term before? There's riches and niches. So what is your niche? We want to help you have one by the time you leave here today. Even if you don't have one by Sunday or Saturday, at least you know that I have to go find one. And a lot of times, your niche will be determined by your own interests. I'll talk in a little while about how to find these niches. Something that you've had a problem with that you've overcome, and you now can speak to that problem and you can speak to that niche. But here are the 3 best ways that I have found, and they're all available to all of you, to isolate a niche that you can be extremely effective with and that you can connect with right away. And there's 3 things. There's direct mail, there's Facebook advertising, and there's Google advertising. And I'm going to tell you exactly why I chose these 3. Do any of you use any of these 3 when you market? Lars? RC? The cool thing about direct mail, and we do a lot of direct mail as a company, as some of you know, is that, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret that you might not love here, is that direct mail lists are sold on a daily basis. Actually, I should say they're rented. So how many of you guys read Men's Health magazine? So not a very healthy room, clearly. Okay. Let's do another one. How many of you guys read Success magazine? Slightly successful room. Let's go to the next one. How many of you read Wine Enthusiast magazine? Okay, so let's go with that one. So The Wine Enthusiast magazine is a huge publication, by the way. And a lot of times we think with all this online media that there's just like nothing happening offline. Some people really actually think that there's like no offline world. And I can tell you from experience and from a lot of research and from being around some really, really high-level marketing advisors that the offline world is as rabid as they come with the 50 to 55 baby boomer audience who was brought up in an era where there was no devices. They prefer, I could do a poll in this room, it works every time, I'm going to do it in a minute. They prefer print over digital, and they trust print over digital more. How many of you are baby boomers in the room? We're all family, it's cool, right? How many of you are baby? Now, keep your hands up if you prefer to consume information via print, like magazine, newsletter, physical print. Okay? Look around. Don't look at me, look around the room, you'll learn more. It's a pretty good amount of people. So if you were only a digital advertiser, guess what happened? You just lost half the room. So the answer is both. It's not one or the other. But the beautiful thing about direct mail, and we do some very targeted, very effective direct mail as a company, is that I can go out and rent the Wine Enthusiast list tomorrow. And I could send anything I want to send them in the mail. Doesn't matter what I write. They're renting their list to me. Let's say there's 50,000 purchased subscribers, people who buy subscriptions to Wine Enthusiast on that list. You know I can go rent that 50,000 person list, and I can craft a direct mail piece to that list, send it to them, put it in their mailbox, not their inbox, their mailbox. It can arrive on their kitchen table, and if I'm in the wine, I don't know, the wine club business or whatever it is, that's a pretty targeted message to a really targeted market. Would you agree? You know this stuff happens all day long. When was the last time you subscribed to something? Newsletter, magazine, one of those, what are those cooking clubs they have now? I get like one a day. The Sun Basket, what are the ones where they send the prepared food in and you can cook it all? There's a million of them. How many of you have ever subscribed to one of those? Have you kind of noticed the oddness of the fact that you're now getting multiple direct mail pieces from their competitors now? Yes? Because you know what they do? They rent their list back to one another. Sunbasket has a non-converting list. They might sell to this one, Lloyd, that you mentioned. What was it called? Butcher Box. That's good, by the way. That's the steaks. I do that one. Butcher Box says, hey, we have all these non-converted customers. Let's rent it to Sunbasket. Maybe they won't want my meat, but they might want my pre-made meals. It's amazing that I have 9 of these in my mailbox in like 2 weeks, right? Because they're renting their lists. Isn't that amazing? So that is the most targeted form of market finding you can get is in direct mail. Now, Facebook advertising is number 2. How many of you have put on your profile that you love yoga, and suddenly, miraculously, why are all these yoga ads showing up down the right-hand sleeve? It's like they can read my mind. They know me. I mean, you get emotional about this, right? They're like, God, they just know me. It's amazing. Like you fall in love with at Facebook because they're harvesting your data. This is why Facebook gets in a little bit of heat because people feel there's privacy issues, whatever. But at the end of the day, Facebook is a absolute brilliant, genius, interest-targeted marketing platform. How many of you do Facebook advertising? How many of you do Facebook advertising where you just send your amazing message to everybody on Facebook? How many of you have figured out a way to find the yoga enthusiast or the fitness enthusiast or perhaps the Tony Robbins lovers because you have a personal development offer? That's target marketing versus putting your ad in front of a million people. And then there's Google, which is the third one, which is a little harder to get on. Jeff and I got our start on Google. Why is Google so effective with this target marketing conversation? Anybody want to guess? Because they type in, how do I fill in the blank? Could you be any more targeted than the guy who has a problem at home and he types in, how do I fix my, I don't know, give me some ailment, right? How do I fix my, how do I change my own oil? Good one. How do I change my own oil? And anybody who has some sort of information offer on how to change oil or how to overcome a problem, boom, your ad shows. So if you guys figured out a way to rent some buyer list through direct mail, to find a way to crack Facebook advertising, to find a way to get into the search model of Google. These are 3 totally different models, by the way. Direct mail is a rental list model. Facebook is a niche marketing model, like a niche interest model. And Google is a search model.